Files are the lifeblood of business, and your employees will open the files they need to do their jobs, whether they're safe or not. With Votiro, your employees will only open files that are safe. Votiro applies zero trust principles to files and sanitizes every incoming file for your organization. Known and unknown threats are removed instantly, and the file retains full functionality, so your business is safe and productivity never slows down. And it's not just for email. The Votiro Cloud API works on web downloads, file uploads, cloud apps, FTP, and content collaboration portals. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Votiro. According to the 2022 Data Breach Investigations Report, the human remains the #1 driver of breaches today, demonstrating that cybersecurity is no longer just a technical challenge, but a human one as well. But how do you manage the human risks of cybersecurity? It starts with measurement. Only by effectively quantifying human risk can organizations engage employees with relevant activities to truly change human behavior. That's human risk management. Map key human behaviors to the business risks that matter most to your organization for free by visiting securityweekly.com/living security.
The Security Weekly News is live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern Time most every week. I try to scan and produce a quick look at some major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Jason Wood, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you will look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, and Tyler Robinson. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2023 full conference pass. RSA Conference is next week, yes, April 24th to 27th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2023 and use the code 53UCyber. Hope to see you there. We will be in Broadcast Alley recording, so definitely stop by and say hi. All right, gentlemen, articles for the week. A couple interesting ones in here. I started with, I love this first article, how security is a revenue booster, not just a cost center, right? I mean, we've fallen into this cost center trap for a long time, Jason, right?
Yes.
And you're starting to see more and more articles and discussions about how security can actually improve and increase revenue. It's not just a cost center. I'd love to understand how you're doing this, because I know you have a lot of experience using security as a revenue driver.
I'm so glad these conversations are actually making it up to the media at this point, because 4 years ago we were talking about this, Matt, about how we need to change that paradigm, and how I've made it a career choice to focus on that. I mean, in all honesty, that's what I chose to make sure I was sitting in front of our leadership saying, how can we be an enabler for this organization? And at the end of it, we just had the conversation on the last segment. It's about focusing on reducing friction, reducing risk, right? Bringing that business enablement mentality to the rest of the business and partnering with the rest of the business. At the end of the day, we're not just security leaders, we're business executives. And we need to take that position as a business executive as well as a cybersecurity and risk evangelist, right? And partner and consultant. But we also have to remember we're business executives. We have to align with the business.
That also means we have to be the ones to initiate that change and to change that dialogue and that culture, starting with us.
100%.
Right?
We have to lead by example. It's a really hard conversation to sit in front of a CFO and say, I saved you X amount of dollars because I've prevented Y from happening. That's ghost. That's vapor. That's a hard conversation to have. The better conversation to have is, I created a brand differentiator because I made privacy and data security essential and core to our business. I took security first and made, a secure by design CI/CD pipeline for our application. It's, in the financial systems, maybe you can leverage fraud detection as that differentiator, service reliability, all of these things that you can take and push ahead. When I was CISO of a $500 million IT services organization, I sat back and I said, every single opportunity that goes through this organization that touches the cybersecurity team, the risk team, the governance team, and we help enable that, guess what? We're tagging ourselves in Salesforce. So at the end of every quarter, I can say, we helped enable X amount of millions of dollars to go through this organization. Because in many instances, that's a stopgap. If you can't get through vendor risk assessment, if you can't get through all of those loopholes and challenges you're going to get from clients, they're not going to do business with you, right? So that was one of the say easy things and pretty much do easy. All I had to do was get access to Salesforce, which in many instances the cybersecurity team doesn't even have. So if you don't, guess what? Get access to Salesforce and start tagging how many opportunities you're helping drive through the pipeline and winning. That's revenue generation that you're enabling. That's an easy one.
Yeah, you gotta get that, I guess, context right within the organization where people start to see that you're related to the opportunities, and then have a way to report, categorize, and classify how many deals and what percentage of revenue you're potentially helping impact, right? And especially if you can highlight specific opportunities or specific deals that wouldn't have closed, and get customers to actually articulate that. That can be a game changer
100%.
internally in the business.
You know,
right? and then you become a partner to sales, and then you have a much better seat at the table when you're discussing dollars during budgets.
You know, Ben, you become more than a partner. You become the sales team becomes dependent on your consultative mentality and your consultative team. We turned from an organization that was reactive when it came to cybersecurity to sales team engaging our team and saying, we have to have you on this call up front. Changing the mind of the sales team.
Yeah, that should be what you're articulating in the when you're articulating your vision and your strategy. It's not about, hey, here's how we're going to protect against ransomware. Of course you're going to do that. Right. But your question should be, how do we remove cycles from the sales process? Oh, we can put a trust page up, right? We can articulate a quicker time to vision for a customer about what our cyber strategy looks like and show value. So we're going to pull out 2 weeks, 4 months out of the sales process about going through those third-party reviews. Then all of a sudden, again, you're involved, you're engaged, you're a key part of the business, and that just definitely shows value back to the company.
And it's the confidence you can bring to the table. When you have a salesperson who has a multi-million-dollar deal at the table, and all of a sudden the anxiety is through the roof because they got challenged by the security team of this client, and you can look back and say, man, that's an easy one. Here, send them this, send them that, get them our GRC documentation set, get that over to them. If they have questions, you tell them to call me directly. If we want to get a meeting with the CISO or the risk people directly, let's do that. Easy one. We got this handled. That creates confidence. And now those are evangelists for security around the organization. Now, we talk about revenue generation, but let's talk about how we can drive profitability, right? A security team, much like an IT team, has a 30,000-foot view of the organization because we're seeing what all the other departments are doing. We can identify areas of operational efficiency where there's overlap in tools, where there's overlap in SaaS applications, right? Where there's overlap in silos. We can help change process. We can consolidate tools. We can bring that to the table. It's up to us to break out of the security box and say, wow, I just found a CRM that the sales team is using, and it's not Salesforce. It's the West Coast sales team who just built up their own CRM. Wait a minute, risk issue and silo. That's not operational efficiency. That's a silo. That's impactful. We have that 30,000-foot view. We can do those things. We have to break out of that cybersecurity box and become business executives.
I think that's an important thing that we need to start capturing, and maybe this is a future article or segment, but that business aptitude and articulation of ways in which you're able to adopt and adapt the business that provides value. It does enable things, but has direct revenue or direct, I would even say opportunity, not opportunity lost, but opportunity gain. Net positive. Yeah. You can take all of these bits and pieces and you start to build that and craft that culture and articulate that to the business in the proper format with all these ideas that maybe you hadn't even thought of. Now you have really enabled. You get marketing behind you, you get sales behind you. Now you've got a whole bunch of evangelists that are really good at talking, really good at selling, and are changing internally across multiple verticals inside the business. That's when you really start to see a culture shift. And I think those are important dialogues that not everybody thinks about, not everybody has the experience to understand. So getting those conversations going and having people that have done this makes a really valuable conversation long term too.
100%. And I'll say it's all built on relationships and trust, because your peers, your colleagues will not open up to that level. They won't show that level of vulnerability if they don't trust you, right? So that's the important piece of building trust across business units and taking that executive approach, because you can't be going to the table speaking in technical jargon. You need to be speaking in business language, right? You need to be speaking to the business. And there's ways to do that. And that's how you gain that trust. You know, I've heard lots of folks push back and say, we're understaffed, we're under budgeted, we can't be focusing on the rest of the business at a high scale. We need to focus on security and technology security. Well, if you put the hard work up front and you align to the business, you're not going to be under budgeted. You're going to be invested in. Because when I was able to walk to the table and say to a CEO and a CFO, I enabled $14 million in the pipeline this quarter, do you think they're going to cut my budget? I don't think so. It's not going to happen, right? So you need to be able to put this hard work up front to be able to build that connection, be embedded in the business, understand how this business operates, what the motivation of all of your colleagues and business unit leaders is, so that way you can create that enablement. You can build those relationships and have those conversations and show that you're driving $14 million a quarter in revenue. Well, guess what? We're going to invest.
You have to change the conversation too, Jason, right? I mean, like, you know, to your point, I mean, if you go to that meeting and you say, hey, you know, there's this new compliance regulation coming out, and if we don't meet this regulation, or we're not, you know, adherent to this dictate that's being spread by whatever body, then we're going to potentially face a fine, or somebody's going to potentially say that falls on deaf ears, right? People are obviously at that point trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I skirt around that? How do I take the least path to that? Or we can turn that around and say, hey, there's this new regulation coming out and it's going to impact us because customers are going to require this. And as a result, I see a competitive advantage if we can get out in front of this and we can change that conversation with the customer, and we can enable an additional amount of sales. We can forecast this additional potential amount of revenue, or we can be competitive with this additional amount of revenue. Well, you've changed that conversation now. Now you're having a business conversation versus having a technical control conversation.
100%.
Right?
It's the CMMC story that's happening now, Ben, right? CMMC, DoD contractors. Do we want to focus on this? Do we want to take it from a position of fear and say we need to do this because our clients are going to expect it and they're going to leave us? No. What we walk to the table and say, this is an opportunity to drive into a vertical that needs help. So we need to understand this. We need to bring this to the table, and we can help these clients get to where they need to be. It will help drive revenue. It will bring clients in. It'll allow us to get deeper and wider in our client base. We may be doing this tactical cybersecurity piece. Well, guess what? Now we're helping them with compliance. Now we're helping them build a program. Now we're doing additional work and getting deeper and wider into the organization. Those are the conversations we need to be having at the executive level. Absolutely right.
So, Jason, 100% of our pipeline goes through a data security assessment because we're a cloud-based solution, right? We're putting client data into a cloud environment. Every single one's going to go through a third-party review. It just does. Like, it's not an option for us. And if you're transacting a business that's in the cloud and pulling in client data, you're going to go through a data security assessment. You better get your arms ahead of this because it's going to influence revenue regardless.
Absolutely.
It
100%.
is the pipeline.
Yeah. And you know, to Ben's point, it may slow down revenue generation. Right.
Oh yeah.
It may not completely.
That's
right. Extend the sales cycle. Right. So now that's revenue that you can't recognize until later. Right. So now you're slowing the entire cycle down, and your revenue is starting to slow down. Your cash flow is slowing down. Everything starts to grind to a halt.
Yeah.
How do you create those operational efficiencies? We'll get ahead of it. Have the answer to those questions. Have the answer to those questions for every vertical you deal with and you work with. Have that done up front. Build the relationships, know your clients, know what drives their businesses, and be able to bring that to the table and build a strategy around that. You'll get invested in. I promise you. I promise you, you will not be seen as friction to the business.
which leads into our second article, which is this is a startup story, but it's still it's to the point. How do you get funding for a cybersecurity program? And it's funny because they list out the different types of attacks. I'm like, yeah, just listen to the first segment of the show, and that takes care of like three or four of these on the list.
That's right. No, it's the same mentality. It's just a different strategy because you have less budget to deal with, right? I mean, you're trying to build a business. You're on the ground floor of building a business. So in that instance, it's prioritize the risk. Know where that risk is and focus there, right? And make sure you can shore that up. What's your customer base? What's going to motivate them? What do you need to put in place to make sure you can have that sales cycle and sell to them quickly so that they trust you as a partner, right? So it's the same strategy. It's just you have to do it with more focus on the startup level because you don't have the funds, the personnel, the amount of folks to do it. So
but that's why it's even more critical for the CISO or the security organization to understand the business.
That's it.
Right? Like understand the business so you can categorize the risk and figure out what to prioritize and focus on. But again, figure out how to position that in a business focused term that they can understand and say, look, we can't do everything. I'm not going to put this crazy budget in front of you, but we've got to do this because it's key to customer acceptance, right? Yeah. It's key to customer sales.
Yeah, in an enterprise, you may sit back and say, "Hey, I want that expensive Gartner Magic Quadrant tool to do all this wonderful stuff." Well, that may not be an option, right? Use the ecosystem that you have, right? If you're on M365, maybe using all of those utilities there to get you on your feet and get you going and build you up to that enterprise level. Use the tools that you have effectively and efficiently. Use that budget effectively and efficiently. And that's knowing the risks. That's knowing the threat vectors. It's knowing what your customers need and what they want. It's understanding the business. So you know where to invest.
Yeah, if you're going to create a budget for a startup, go Microsoft. Embed a bunch of the Microsoft capabilities right into your program. That'll keep you super efficient.
You're paying for the licenses anyway, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
exactly right.
Go E5, get it all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a very efficient way to go get a budget. And
absolutely.
You need email and you need all these systems anyways. You might as well get the added benefit of the security capabilities, bundle it all into one budget and stay super efficient.
That's right.
Then as you mature and get more budget, then you can look at other best of breed technologies. But oh my gosh, Microsoft E5 will get you a long way.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Yeah. These next two articles, I'm just going to mention them because we've got a whole segment on this coming up. It's all about skills gap and how do we solve for this. We're actually going to do the Say Easy, Do Hard segment. We're going to pre-record it right after this for next week. So I think we'll dig into that a little more in that segment. But these articles are here. I didn't know if anybody wanted to comment on them quickly or if we should just
I want to sit back and I want to get a little bit of consensus here from this group because we talk about this all the time. We talk about all of these organizations out there saying, ISC squared, ISACA, all these organizations coming, all these studies from Fortinet and all Microsoft and just bringing back all this data about how there's such a skills gap, such a shortage in professionals in the cybersecurity space. And, 3.4 million is always getting thrown out there, 700,000 here in the US. And I want to sit back and because I hear folks saying, we're out here. The talent is here. We're here. We're out here. What do you mean there's a skills gap? What do you mean there's a shortage? We talked about it a couple of shows ago where, I think it was for every 2 cybersecurity jobs, there's one left unfilled, 2 that are filled, one gets left unfilled. Is there a problem? Is there a gap? Is there a shortage? That's the number one question. All of the data that I see, all of the studies that I see, everything I see coming out of these professional organizations say there's a problem. I, up until now, thought there was a problem, right? But I want to hear from you guys. Do we think there's a skills gap? Do we think there's a shortage? Are we doing things wrong and not hiring the right people? That's a different conversation, right? Because we need to be bringing folks with attitude and aptitude into the space. I think that's a big problem. Are there folks out there who say they're cybersecurity professionals and that we're here to be hired? Sure. Yes, absolutely. Do they have the entire set of skills that I need today to hire? Maybe not.
I call BS.
Yeah. You call BS on the shortage?
I call BS on the shortage. I would 100% say that there are open jobs.
Mhm.
I really severely doubt there are 3.14 million open jobs. If there were that, we would have some very clear numbers, and I really don't think that's the case. Maybe there are that many open jobs with requirements that don't match or salaries that don't match. Okay, so there's two different.
This is what
problems.
I'm trying to drive into, right? Is it a skills gap or is it a different problem we're facing right now?
Well,
Those are two separate
it's all in the words, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the detail and the definition of what you call this. So I'll play devil's advocate here a bit. I think there is a skills shortage, right? I think there is a lack of people who actually have the skills necessary to do the job. Are there a lack of people who could be hired, be trained, and do the job? Probably not. There probably are people out there, and I constantly hear this thing of like, somebody posts a resume online, and there's 1,000 things that they want this person to do, right? And I think we do overwrite resume requirements a lot.
Agreed.
But I also hear the contrary of, well, I'm a help desk guy, and I want to do cyber. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're skilled. That doesn't mean you're an entry-level cyber person because you have help desk experience, right? Like, what have you done to burden and enhance your skill set in the cyber arena specifically that would then take you as, yes, you're qualified for that position in cyber, right? So it's definitely are you skilled or are you available?
Yeah. And see,
right?
I think this is the difference in the terminology, like you said, Ben, right? Is it a skill shortage or is it a talent gap? Right? What's the difference, right? Are there not enough people out there that we can actually bring in and train to become? Or do they just not, the people applying, do they just not have the skill sets that we're looking for as cybersecurity leaders? As a hiring professional, I'll tell you right now, there are incredibly talented technical folks that come to the table. Their technology acumen is through the roof. Would I put them in front of a customer? No freaking way in hell. Ever.
Yeah.
Never.
See?
Right?
So
The right person for the right role, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
There's the guy that's in the SOC that he's down in the basement, and you're never going to have him talk to anybody.
That's it.
Super technical, and that's wonderful. Now I need somebody who's customer facing in an engagement role. It's a different guy.
But customer facing can be internal as well.
Background.
Ben, customer facing is internal as well.
It could. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying there are internal people that I need to put in a customer role, right? So I have third-party risk, right? Somebody calls me about third-party risk. I need them to engage with a customer of ours, to brief them on the program, to answer questions they have. That's customer-facing. It's a different guy, though, right? Like that is a different. Soft skills are different.
For 30 people that we interview, there may be one who has the aptitude, communication skills, customer service skills, the ability to communicate.
Salary that he thinks he can demand.
Right. And we'll get into this later because for me, there's a lot of personality pieces to this as well, right? I want someone who is, determined to learn. I want someone who will hold themselves accountable. I want someone who's disciplined in their skill set. Like it's a lot, but that's what we need that.
And not a jerk.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I always go back to the Saturday Night Live. Remember the old Saturday Night Live IT guy who'd walk in the door and be like, click, 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 fix your issue. See you later, stupid, and walk out the door. Yeah. That doesn't work in business anymore. That's where we've gotten the bad name in cybersecurity, right? Is because, the attitude isn't there. The customer service centric attitude isn't there. Like I said, you interview tons and tons of people. Would I put them in front of a customer? Would I have that SOC analyst work with an end user and teach them how to be better? No. Yeah. Because the soft skills, I'll put them in quotes, the soft skills are not there.
That's a business expectation, though, right?
Wait. So I don't want to do the whole next.
Yeah, I know. Right? Yeah, right.
But we're going to go back to this, but the soft skills piece, that's these last two articles, right? Because it is about effective communication and some of these soft skills that are going to make you better equipped to have customer conversations with our internal or external and improve customer experience. That's what these last two articles were 100%. About. So I think, Jason, you bring up a very good point, and so did Ben, right? We'll debate the rest in the next episode, but I think effective communication and these soft skills are an important part. They're not important for every single role in cybersecurity, but they're going to be important for a good number of them. And what I want to debate in the next episode is, based on what I'm looking for and what role I'm trying to fill, how important are some of these things? We tend to group all this stuff together. Mm-hmm. I need all the soft skills and all the technical skills in the Uber person. Like, you can't always find that person.
Nope.
Yeah,
right?
No, that's not
and
true. There's a spectrum, to overuse that word.
Correct. Right. And so my point to this is, and the reason I wanted to dig into this in the next segment is, we can't always find the Uber resource, right? So is that a skill gap? Is that a talent short? We'll get into that later, but communication is an important part of this, at least in certain roles, and especially when they're customer facing.
I am going to argue in the next segment that communication skills, whether they're uber mature or at least you have the baseline, are essential in every role. Because I don't care if you're on the development team trying to teach someone why API security is important. You need to be able to communicate that to a business leader who owns the ERP application, is making that financial decision on investment into it, and be able to articulate it without all the bits and bytes, right? You have to be able to a certain degree.
Which is one of the main problems we're facing, not just in this industry, but just, the change in the way we interact with each other, like on a global scale, right? It's in the last 2-3 years have been like a big part of that. But I think even before that, just the way I see it with my kids, the way I see it with kids I interact with, it's different, right? And I think we're losing some of that communication thing, and it's making it ever harder to find.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a technology and psychosocial issue that we need to tackle from a different avenue at an earlier age?
Psychosocial. I don't think it's so much technology. I mean, I think technology layers a problem onto it. But I think if we allow people, like, you can have a Zoom conversation and still communicate well with people, right? But it makes it more difficult when you're not practicing some of those basic skills, right? When you're not, look, people are used to write thank you notes, and I was never one to do that, and it sounds corny, but like letting someone know you appreciate them, engaging with them, like creating that personal contact is something that's kind of going away. And it's to Jason, your thing about the Saturday Night Live skit, hey, I fixed your problem, go away.
Right.
Right. You're stupid.
Exactly it. No, we can't be doing that. And, and I've seen this in threads, communication threads, where you have an executive who's worried about an implementation of, their essential application, and they're looking to move forward, and all you get is a 3-word sentence of "no, not happening" from a security professional. Like, how is that okay? That is not okay. But from our perspective, shame on us for not bringing folks in who have communication skills and or grooming them to have those communication skills. Because we need to help this.
So
problem.
How do we do that more, Jason? Because on the technical side, though, I heard you reference a little earlier in this session. You said, hey, look, I wish email would go away, right? And I see it kind of as, maybe I'm the old guy, right? But I see it kind of as, we used to write letters, then we wrote email. Now we're like chatting with people through text, and now it's like a 1-word answer, right? And it's not even it's abbreviations and 3-letter acronyms for stuff, right? And it's like we're just losing that contact. So how do we focus on that and bring that back?
I have a rule, Ben, and I've told my staff this. I tell my entire the entire business this when I have the chance to mentor them is I have a 3 email, 3 message rule. If you go back 3 times, get on a video call, get on a call, get live with that person and talk through it.
I do the same thing. Pick up the phone.
You're losing productivity. You're losing
pick
time.
Up the damn phone anymore.
Get on a call. Schedule a half-an-hour session where you're face-to-face and you can talk through the issue. Communicate. Not email. Because all you're doing is punting. That's why I hate email. Because it's punt, tag, you're it. Punt, tag, you're it. That's not effective. That's not running the business. That's not value add to the business. That's non-value add.
Well, that's also learning how to write effective emails, because that goes back to effective communication, which is also, I would say, a generational gap difference. So I think we also need to have the expectation in business of what generation and what audience we are dealing with. And from an emotionally intelligent standpoint, as a leader, you tailor and queue up your communication effectively for the generation you're talking to. However, that does not get reciprocated, and that's where we need to mentor and set the expectations of how to effectively communicate and teach the next generation or multiple generations how to also read the crowd and also do that effective communication in a manner that speaks to their audience. Because we'll be honest,
but Tyler,
I would say the next generation seems a little selfish.
Yeah, look, I think every generation has had this problem, right, with the next generation, right? But at its core, like, I think what we can't absolve ourselves of is just saying, well, the new generation likes to use text, new generation likes to use chat, right? New generation likes to send smoke screens. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, how you do it, it's the not the method, but it's the underlying psychological interaction you're having with another human being or individual, right? You're not and I think, when we're doing this remote thing and doing it on the phone, and I'm a big believer in remote work, but when you're doing that, it's like you're interacting with a computer, not realizing there's a person on the other side, and there's still those underlying principles of how you make social contact and connection are still true. And so I think you can certainly do it in a new method of communication, but I think we have to make sure we're still teaching that, and it's not going away. And we don't think that, again, a 2-letter text is an acceptable way to respond and tell me whether we're going to get something done or not.
Right. I mean, if you're sending me that text telling me you want to meet me at the bar later, okay, that's fine. But when you're dealing with an executive within my organization or a customer who's ready to spend $1 million with us, hell freaking no. No, we're going to put the time in. We're going to communicate effectively, and we're going to get our point across. Or you're going to leave that digital medium and you're going to pick up the damn phone, get on a video call, do something where you get that human connection. Have to.
No, I think that's the point. That's the point I think I was trying to make more is communicating for the other person in the manner of providing effective communication. That means that you need to be empathetic, understand who's on the other end, and tailor your communication. Stop having the selfish view of, this is how I like to communicate, so I'm going to communicate that way. And I think that is kind of the missing piece of a lot of the next generation. They just do what they want to do. Where I try and back communicate. I communicate with the executives. I try and understand, do they prefer email, phone? Do I need to expand on this because they like it? Or is it brevity because they're an executive and they're busy? Like, all of those things need to be thought of, and it doesn't have any focus on me. I do everything for the customer, the end user, the end digester of the product. And that's where we need to get, is the empathetic and sympathetic view of doing this for someone else without the selfishness.
Yeah, agreed. It's right in what we do. Cybersecurity is a service to the organization. Well, guess what that means? Serve.
Yes.
Provide a service. Serve. It's not about you. It's about moving the business forward. It's about moving that end user or that customer forward. How do we make them better than we left them?
Agreed. So we're going to move forward. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.